stage, here we come. Vitality all the way. We're going to Worlds. Oh crap. Oh no. Why?
Welcome everyone to the LEC 2023 Summer Group Stage live from Berlin, Germany. With 3 weeks left to play, it's time to show up and secure those all-important championship points on the road for season finals. I'm Laure, joined by Reckless and Andrew. Guys, I'm really happy to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
How are you doing? You were
Great,
just over in Korea for what seems like forever.
Yeah.
Getting some secrets for us? You're going to give us the inside info?
I was carefully studying the Korean meta and the LCK, and I brought back all the good strats, so I will fill you in when the time comes.
Perfect.
But yeah, we have a lot of action to catch up on when it comes to the LEC, so let's remind ourselves of how the regular season panned out and how we got here, because guys, I think the biggest surprise for me watching the LEC from Korea was Vitality going 10th place, 1-8 record. What happened there, Reckless?
I think it was probably a mix of other teams getting much better between spring and summer and them sort of panicking in the moment.
Yeah.
I feel like when the heat was on now and they really need to get the wins on the board, they sort of lost their footing and they seemed to make individual mistakes that you wouldn't normally see. So mix of both, I would say, but mostly the panicking part is what surprised me, because I feel like those are players that normally thrive in these moments and are really good under the heat, so I was surprised to see that they weren't able to handle the pressure.
100%. Like, fantastic individual players around this roster, but I also think, like, because of our format, it's so punishing, especially if you don't come in with it figured out right off the bat. There was still a little cohesion, I think, player to player, a lot of, solo play attempts, whether it was like Bo going a little bit overreaching in the jungle or the soul lane's not quite being there, to the point where they're subbing out Bo in the last week of the season was just a crazy turnaround from the expectations coming into the top of the year.
Yeah.
And while their season hopes aren't completely dashed, it is looking real dire for them.
Yeah, but it can still be fine if you're like Vitality fans. They can come back. We'll explain this a bit later. The good news, though, for the British org is Excel finishing 3rd place this time, 5-1 record in the standing in the last 2 weeks. This is something they've been looking forward to and building over the course of the year through so many lineup changes. But it feels like this time they had the right one.
Yeah, Excel, like, forget about spring, winter. That didn't actually matter. They locked into this like heavy scaling style starting in week 2 of the split. Talk about a team that even in week 1 still hadn't quite figured it out, but went all in for the team fights, very consistent drafts, and I think locked into a way of playing that generated them a lot of wins. They looked very comfortable in those late game team fights.
Yeah, I would say even within the split, we saw a change in how they wanted to play the game. I remember one of the games I was here for in week 1 where they would play this early game team fighting, we need to snowball style, and nothing really stuck, and we gave criticism to Peach after that game that he needs to make something happen on the map. Instead of that actually being the case, they sort of then went on to the late game scaling, the team fighting style, and didn't have to change how Peach plays the jungle, didn't have to change how much they do in the early game, and they just sort of farmed up and became really solid in the later stages. And I think that is the best way to do this kind of group, the best of one stage, because getting to groups is hard as it already is. So with just 9 games under your belt, I think it's a nice way of doing it when you just find your style and you run that home.
And best of 3 is much different, and they're going to be doing it for the first time, unlike many other teams here, so we'll see how this one pans out for them. The last team I want to talk about, of course, is Fnatic. A renaissance for Fnatic, if I may say, with Noah joining the pack. back on the top of the standings, I feel that this is something that every Fnatic fan will be happy about.
Oh, 100%. I just feel like with Noah and Trimby coming into this team, like that duo lane just worked from like the get-go, which is not something you'd maybe immediately expect. We knew there was going to be talent down on the bot side, but whether it was Trimby early on playing the Thresh or going back to the Enchanter supports, as well as Noah's positioning and awareness in team fights, that has been the big difference maker that has given them a ton of consistency, as well as I think Razork really showing up in the jungle.
Yeah, I would say Noah had actually 9 really good games. Even the 2 games they lost, he was really good, and it feels like that sort of game gave them a point of play throughout these games. Normally before it would be maybe about Oscar carrying games and he wasn't able to handle that pressure, or trying to play through mid, which is a hard thing to do with how many members people are sending around that lane. So the fact that they actually have this bot lane now where they can play through that pretty much regardless of the matchups they're in, that just seems to help out the others in the team so much, and they can focus more on themselves then, and instead of having to be the carry for the team.
And it's really interesting to see how quickly they found their groove and synergy together within the LEC, hopefully for a really good run here in the group stage. Who would be the favorites for group, though? Because we have new strength in the LEC, new teams joining, some feel much stronger, some not as strong as they were before. What do you see happening here in Group Sander?
I mean, at the end of the day, like G2 still kind of reigns supreme here, but for me, I have really high expectations for Fnatic. Like, to me, I feel like we are kind of returning to the days of old. I'm looking at like G2 Fnatic potentially down the road meeting up in finals. As far as other teams that I think can maybe surprise, Mad Lions, I'm still not buying out of them completely. I think they're always a team that's going to show up once you start getting to the best of series.
Yeah, I would definitely add Mad to that. I feel like the meta here is going to fit them so well as well. I feel like they sort of fell short with this Enchanter meta both early on in this year and now in summer. But with this patch, I feel like this could totally unlock Hilly and he could do his things again, and then Mad Lions is a completely different team.
Yeah, and we'll see if they look better today, at least as they will face off against Excel later. But as we said, we have 3 more weeks here in the LEC for our teams to qualify for the season finals event. So I would like to take a look on the ranking and see and see how things are looking so far for the scenarios. The first one, and the one that I would like to stress here, is Astralis. As you can see here, they cannot make season finals anymore. They have 105 points, and it's never going to be enough for them to catch up to the other teams. Good news, though, for the BDS fans, as we are going to see here. They are 1 series away. Winning the group stage locked them into season finals because not enough teams would be able to pass them, so they only need 1 victory here to be secure. The other team that I would like to talk about, as we mentioned, Fnatic is back, and of course they have all the chances to make it to the season finals here, but to do so, they need to be high in the standings, and here I think top 2 would give them an ideal scenario to lock in the playoffs. Now we have to focus on lesser good news, and we mentioned Vitality earlier. Even though their season is over for now, they still have chances to make it to the season finals. So how do they make it happen? Basically, we need Vitality, we need teams that already have more points than Vitality, like Mad Lions, G2, BDS, even Fnatic, to get as high as possible. So if you're a Vitality fan, you want these teams to finish as high as possible, because as you can see here, if BDS also makes it, they will be locked in the season playoffs. The only thing you can remember here is that we need all the teams that were above them in the standings to finish before that, and all the teams who were not quite successful so far in the LEC to stay as low as possible for Vitality to make it playoffs. So we're gonna see what happened here earlier, and as you can see now, Vitality should be in, they're not. Okay, that's odd. But yeah, SK needs to be lower here. And then, bam! Vitality makes top 6. Is all these teams are lower in the standings and all these teams are higher in the standings. So we'll see how this one pans out for them. But that's all for us here now. The final hurdle for the season finals will be played on 13.13, as we said. So let's check out the major changes in the patch.
The LEC is back! After a week's break, 8 teams are returning to the Rift on 13.13. Not a very lucky number, but it is going to be our patch for the next 3 weeks across summer groups and playoffs. First, we have not only 1, but 2 champions enabled after their mid-scope update in Ivern and Rel. Now, if you don't know all the changes, Ivern can now recast Q to jump directly to the target, while Ivern and allies can still issue an attack command to move to their auto attacks range distance away from the target. His shield now gets renewed if no enemies are hit by the initial detonation, and the tree's best friend Daisy should now get way more done with some big buffs. Okay, maybe not that much. She was, however, hit by some nerfs on the LEC patch 13.13, which slightly limits her ability to chase down enemies along with the big tree. Ivern was still a high priority pick in the LCS, who played on 13.13 last week.
Is he gonna die? No, he has the shield from our mail, keeping him alive!
Rel has been played in both support and jungle after her rework, rising in priority both in the LPL and LCK, even after her nerfs on 13.12.
Carrier finally finds his moment!
The Iron Maiden's Q now stuns all targets hit for 0.75 seconds, while her passive, Break the Mold, is a lot easier to stack. Her E now also has the new active, which gives her and 1 ally the chance to charge faster into the fight. Important to note, Rel's bonus damage to monsters from her abilities received nerfs on 13.12, which limited her clearing speed in the jungle, but remember, in the mid-scope rework did receive pretty significant buffs, so yeah, she's still a jungler, be aware. Regardless, prepare to see some epic engages from her this week, maybe from an old friend like Hillisang, perhaps? For the bot lane, 13.12 introduced nerfs to some of the key champions we've been seeing. Aphelios, the most picked AD carry in the LEC this summer, also received some nerfs on 13.13, and luckily for Humanoid, his turrets are included. How have they not learned yet? Nobody knows. So after 3 weeks of a very repetitive bot lane meta, let's take a second to celebrate these latest updates. Hopefully, this means that the bot lane will change in the upcoming weeks. Looking at the LPL on 13.12, Kai'Sa has risen in priority, and the king himself, Uzi, even pulled out a Vayne.
And he gets a kill! Uzi! He's going!
Hopefully, we'll see the same level of variety in the bot lane in the LEC as well. The stakes are high for the next 3 weeks as teams look to lock in their spot in the season finals. Who will adapt the best to 13.13 and get a head start on the meta? Find out as we kick off the summer group stage.
Yeah, so a lot of changes here in the next 2 patches that we're gonna have to catch up on. I want to touch on the bot lane because I think it's gonna be the lane that may be taking the biggest hits here. We heard that Zeri is gone, Yuumi is gone. I'm not sure about Aphelios though, but Reckless, what are your thoughts on the bot lane meta and how it's gonna shape up to look like?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Aphelios either. I feel like he's such a stable pick, and you can kind of always go for that, and it doesn't really ever go wrong. So I don't think he would necessarily be out the same way Zeri and Yuumi is out. But what catches my eye is Static Shiv and Kai'Sa. So first things first, I think Kai'Sa is going to be a pick we see a lot this patch. She's good not only in the bot lane, but also in the mid lane. And you're kind of limited in which champions you can play in the mid lane when it comes to the AD carry. It's sort of just Kai'Sa and Tristana right now. As for Static Shiv, people probably think this will not be the case this patch, because it has been nerfed and it's not as simple as it was before, sorry. But the thing is, what people are doing now, not only in the mid lane, but also in the bot lane, is taking DMAT on their champions and therefore being able to get the extra percentage damage on the range creeps and later on one-shotting the wave, as you used to do with Static Shiv. So I think we'll see a bunch of that still. And if you get a Kai'Sa with DMAT in your game, don't panic, it's for Static Shiv.
It all works out. That wave clear is just so gross. And I mean, generates you so much priority and whatnot. So I think that is, of course, something we have to pay attention to. I also think that, like, with the nerf to some of the scaling options in the bot side, range supports as well, melee supports are something we're going to have to be looking at, which increases the prevalence of some of our, like, second-tier ADs almost, like more lane-dominant picks. Like, we have our Draven players that I think that might be a good look next to some melee supports. The Xayah is still going to be there and very present. But a guy like Hillisang, like Dracos was talking about in the patch, with stuff like Rel and other melees, has to be unleashed.
Yeah, it should be pretty much only melees for this patch. I think Milio could see more bans than picks, if anything, but it should be melees for pretty much the rest of it. And as you said, it's going to open up new AD carries. Xayah is one of them, Kai'Sa is one of them. I think even Tristana is now going to be a flex pick instead of just being mid at all times. It's actually going to be for both lanes. So you'll see much more, I think, variety in the AD carry and support pool than before. And that will also then, in turn, open up perhaps new jungle picks and topside picks, because now you don't have to play a tank top or have to play a facilitating jungler, because you have your support sort of doing the brute work of that.
Yeah, in the same way that like G2 earlier in the season was saying we don't care about range supports, we're going to play Nautilus bot sides, that Yike could play the carries in the jungle. When you don't have to deal with that engage option, all of a sudden your other options open up. Your carry top laners, your AP top laners, junglers that can maybe scale a little bit more too.
And we didn't talk about the whole Ivern double AD composition, but that's something you guys want to keep your eyes on, because I think we're going to see them later today. But new meta, we want to play a game during this day. Going to play a bit of bingo, which shows 5 champions per lane, of course. So you guys know the concept. It's really simple, but I want you guys to talk me through the strats you had coming up with placing the champions, because, yeah, you need to have one line of champions to win the game. I went with the easy one of going lane per lane so that I can play with diagonals and straight lines like this. But Andrew, talk me through your reasoning and why you think your strat is best.
Well, I think going lane by lane is a little bit of trolling. Like, yeah, you could win if you get the perfect comp and it gets locked in, but I think you're not always going to see those comps coming through. So I actually went for a lot of like pairs. So it's like, oh, Cassante Sion, that's a topside matchup that even our first series we might be seeing. Stuff like that, like AD carries, like if there's a Felios, Jinx, of course, is something that is often seen as an answer. So I'm looking to win by game 2. And
wow.
beat you all.
Yeah, I was kind of also thinking to do more by popularity. So I tried to stack the champions I feel like we're going to see the most of in the top rows, so that I try to finish off fast. But I sort of liked your way, because I feel like you might nail it on just the one game if you get the comp.
It can work. Yeah, I took standard comps. We'll see if this one works. One champion that we all have, though, is Rel. If our viewers don't know, the champion has been changed, and it can be flexed, actually, both support and jungle. So I would like you guys to talk me through what is going on with Rel, why is it a good champion, and when is the situation to pick it?
So I feel like they made Rel just much more scary to play against with the changes. So before, when I played against Rel, I always felt like she had this one play, sort of like a Malphite tool. She had this one play, and all you had to do was think about this play. Sometimes you'd mess it up and you'd get caught, but most of the time you'd keep it in your mind and you'd be able to dodge it. Now, with the changes, she has so many different play patterns. She can engage with E, with W, with Q, so you don't really know how to deal with her. It feels like she's sort of... Yeah, she's just sort of too powerful right now, and therefore also able to be picked early and flexed, because she fits in every comp. Doesn't really matter if you're actually diving into the enemy team. She's just strong on her own.
Yeah, and I think as far as like seeing her drafted like very early in comps, the fact that she can be flexed into jungle, even though it's not her most popular role, because she did get just the straight up like 250% damage bonus to her Q that got walked back a little bit in subsequent patches, but her jungle clear is still just fine to be able to keep up. And then of course you're just a roaming support without a lane to ever attend to. You've got insane team fighting around objectives, those sorts of things. So you can flex her into the jungle to avoid tough matchups in the bot lane.
Yeah, we have a lot of flex picks, actually, going into this new patch. It's going to get interesting.
That's the best type of League of Legends.
I love it, yeah. And that's what makes Europe usually more successful. But before we head into our first series of the day between Mad Lions and Excel, let's hear from Mad's coaching staff, Mac and Pad. Trouble, take it away.
Thank you very much, Laure. I'm sitting here with Mac and Pad. We don't get this very often. Now, first of all, I want to ask you guys, what is happening backstage? I heard a lot of noise, a lot of Disney songs.
There's some karaoke going on backstage.
Okay.
Karaoke.
Okay, who's the best singer?
Ooh, I think probably Seth or Mac. Like, those two can hit a note.
Well, now that I brightened up the mood, the last 5 games haven't been that great for Mad. We talked together, Mac, at the very beginning of the split, actually, and you told me about you guys going through all the MSI VODs, you watching a lot of the Eastern teams and trying to implement the way they team fight and set up objectives. What do you think went wrong in these last 5 games?
I think there are so many different factors. Honestly, I'm still not 100% sure, because it felt like there was a different problem kind of every day or every week or whatever. I think some of it comes down to draft read, some of it comes down to us just not finding our like comfort picks that we're feeling like that we're going to kind of be the X factor on, you know. So I think a lot of it does come down to the way we adapted to the meta. I'm hoping that the work that we've put in over that period will start to show up in the BO3s when it comes to how our fundamentals show now that we're on a different patch, and I think we're a bit more comfortable with our read on the meta, I hope. So fingers crossed.
Talking about being comfortable on the meta pad, I was watching Niski and Elyoya on Euphoria a little bit, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, other regions have been playing these pads already, and we kind of know what champions are good and which ones are not. But we're also the first LEC to play on stage, so it might be a completely wrong read.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be a flip coming in, but we have a fair amount of data, and the differences from patch 13 to 12 isn't really that big. And I think Mac already touched on it. I think the most important thing for us is making sure that we have like those champions for each player, and particularly for like Yo-Yo and Niski together, that where they feel like they have an X factor, where they can go in, unlock these two champions for them, and they will win me the game. And that's something we've been missing throughout the split so far, but something that we've hopefully landed on now.
Yeah, because even though Gragas got nerfed, Niski said, yeah, but for people who are really good on Gragas, did he really get nerfed? Now, of course, you guys made a fantastic comeback over in spring, in the best of series. What has been your preparation this time, jumping from the best of ones to the best of threes?
I think part of us kind of leveling up towards the best of threes is often the preparation. Like when we have more time on the patch, when we have more time to scout opponents, when we have more time to improve quality of life things and come to a BO3 or a BO5 really, really prepared for kind of all of the drafts, for all of the opponent scouting, for everything that we're looking at, as well as actually being able to take more time to do team activities and have fun together and whatever it is, right? Karaoke or whatever the hell. I think that's been a big success factor for Mad Lions historically for pretty much as long as I've been here, which is that when the team is having fun, we do better.
Well, I do really hope that one comes true. Thank you very much, guys, and good luck in your first best of three of the split. And Laura, over to you guys on the desk.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trouble. Always interesting to hear about the Mad Lions approach of none of the boring stuff, only the fun stuff. That's what I see for them, and letting the players express themselves when it comes to being happy. And it showed before, not quite since MSI, it feels, because they were the spring champions, didn't quite come back at the form we were expecting them to after MSI, and then excel from 10th place to make it 3rd. A lot of things changed for both these teams.
Yeah, I feel like for Mad, the patches have sort of been suboptimal for them the entire year, and if anything, I'm actually surprised with how well they've been doing, especially in the bot lane throughout this year, because I feel like Hilly is notorious for not being comfortable at these champions, and he's sort of made it work anyway. But now when we are here at patch 13.13, Rel's the strongest champion, then you have Braum after that, Rakan. Who's coming to your mind? It's Hilly saying.
It's Hilly.
For me, when I saw this patch and I was thinking about the teams and how it will affect them, I felt like Mad Lions sort of struck gold here. I feel like they really got something good with this patch, and with as well how they did in spring, how they came back in that playoffs. I feel like it's hard to bet against them here. I feel like this is a perfect moment for them to bounce back.
Yeah, and I think on the other side, XL was a team that everyone was betting against since that winter split. Just absolutely dreadful, getting eliminated early. Spring, it doesn't get much better for them either. And then all of a sudden, they're able to turn it around. Obviously, Peach comes into the jungle, but even that wasn't like Peach comes in and is suddenly like solo carrying games. This is a full team like rebrand almost. Between weeks 1 and 2 of this split, they locked into strong team fighting, strong scaling options, and played that to an absolute perfection to win 5 out of the last 6.
And I think it makes sense when you're a team that has been struggling so much to find easy to execute comps. But when you look at the early game for XL especially, this is when they collapse. And I'm wondering how difficult it's going to be against Mad Lions today to have these difficult early games.
I think pretty difficult actually to keep it stable early. It's just going to get worse when it's melee supports and it's maybe more carry top laners, because then it's really volatile matchups. It can swing quickly and it's hard to come back in the matchups. It's sort of just going to snowball out of control. So it will be harder now, if anything, to keep it stable, I would say.
Yeah, I will say, like, coming in, that Mad Lions obviously going to be trying to attack during the style of game. That's just how Mad Lions draft, how they play. But looking at this in isolation, this is like a symptom of the style of League of Legends they're playing, right? Like, they don't need to be looking to push lane advantage to generate leads, right? They're playing for the strong scaling. So if anything, the fact that they are getting owned in the early game a little bit and then still winning all their games just shows how effective this game plan is coming in and how strong they are in the team fight phase, sort of work around Patrick and the scaling options that Updog is almost always going into. That Azir has been an absolute staple of his that's been rock solid.
I'm just wondering how much of this can work coming into best of 3 scenarios, because they've been playing mostly the same kind of composition. Then when you come to series, usually you want to have more tools at your disposal. So what should Excel do today coming against Mad Lions? Keep the same approach or hope they have enough innovations to take them down?
Yeah, I think it's a tough question to really nail down because they've had 2 weeks. There might be some ideas in their camp to be like, okay, let's try to experiment. Let's see if we can make this other style work with a little bit of extra time. I think in those first few days they have of practice last week, that's where they could see maybe there's something there. But if not, I don't know. I feel like sticking to your guns may end up being the right approach here for them because it was so effective during the regular season.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't change anything. I feel like it's a hard thing to do because you see how LCK is doing, LPL is doing, and you feel the patch and you're probably thinking to yourself, it's all about the early game, it's all about fighting, but you got here by playing the late game and playing the team fighting, so I wouldn't change that. I would stick to that at least for today and see how it goes before making any drastic changes.
Yeah,
Best of 3, I think, is the best time to try and test your fundamentals. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I was gonna say the most important thing is finding out how to neutralize the early game playmaking options of Mad Lions, right? Like Hill is saying, especially something like the Rel. Are we banning it out? Are we picking things like Braum into it? Those sorts of things. Because on top of it, Mad Lions know these consistent picks that are coming in, right? Like the Maokai for Peach, the Sion Cassante on the top side for Odo. In the mid lane, right? Azir, probably Tristana as another option now on the coming patch. So the solo lanes for Mad Lions have a lot of flexibility when it comes to, okay, do we want to go for more aggressive counter picks? Like Chasey's a guy that can absolutely bust something out, whether it's a crazy Fiora or something that's stepping up like a Rumble. Like these are options that you can be moving into in the solo lanes to try and really punish in the lane phase.
It's going to be an interesting best of 3 series to see where these teams stand out, but 3 more weeks of Summer Split ahead of season finals, and team now need to perform now to secure these important championship points. It is time to kick off the group stage.
Mad Lions heard you! It's over! They want to claim the MSI spot for themselves!
I think towards the end of spring we started getting very sloppy and maybe we were lacking the competition, so we started becoming the worst version of ourselves. So we managed to lose spring.
G2 out of spring.
But right now we are fully motivated. We got very much destroyed at MSI and we got so much inspiration from that and so much knowledge as well.
G2 Esports secure first in the summer regular season.
When we played them, Graph was not very good, and I honestly don't think we played really bad. All these players, except me and maybe Shigenda, have played against them and won, so I think we can beat them.
Upton hops over the wall, Mega North forward! Koi set their sights on the group stage.
We ended 5-4. Of course, it's really good, especially if you look back at winter and spring. Heretics didn't do that well, so I'm really happy that me and Vitio could do change for the team, but I still think this regular season we could have played way better.
Heretics will lock their spot.
I'm actually happy that we finally got our momentum back slightly, and this is actually going to be a great challenge.
Hey, look at that, he dashes away, flash and one-shot the cannon. Who could have seen it coming?
We for sure can beat them.
FLICKR will take down Kaiser, waiting for the killer instinct, that's going forward. Zap, 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 one more for FLICKR.
We have a lot to show, I believe.
Larson looking to secure groups as a melee man. He might do it, one and all from Larson on the flank, knocked back Astralis' hopes.
We have a lot to prove to ourselves, so we definitely just want to win.
Kill doesn't even care, just keep going. Oh!
Even though we're top 4 now, it's been quite a difficult split.
Excel, from 2 of the worst finishes we have ever seen, have now locked groups.
The only reason we made it here was because we grinded, so the grind can't stop. You can easily go from right now being top 4, top 3 to losing the games, and all of a sudden you end 8.
I think we just need to get back to our basics. The mood wasn't necessarily the best. Trust was a bit broken, and Rhino, it for sure kind of broke us more than made us improve, I would say.
A one-sided stomp from SK as Mad Lions is wiped off the map.
I feel good, I feel relieved, and also against Fnatic for the whole year. We didn't lose once against them. For sure they're looking really good, but I don't feel like they're on the level as G2. That's why for me they're beatable.
They beat us, that was quite convincing. I still think, we could have done slightly better. I really hope at least that those games will help us out to become a better team for the playoffs.
First kill secured to Resort, Baron's down to 1800, available, a double kill for Irrelevant, the Emperor's Divide sends Fnatic to the fountain.
We deserve to for sure be in top 8.
It's not gonna be that hard to beat them.
Another kill to Resort, another to Noah. Fnatic faithful have finally been rewarded.
us is like make top 3 or bust, and even third is probably not enough. So now we just need to make the best out of it.
The choice appears to be fight the teams, and goes Odo!
We just have to take it back up, and if we want to make it to Worlds, we need to be better. It's that easy.